Thank you for tuning into the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. Today on the show, we have Rex Shippy, who is a native from Idaho. He grew up on a farm in a large family with limited financial resources, but he was also taught the qualities of hard work and perseverance. And he never held a traditional job. He started his own business in landscaping and lawn mowing and tree services. And he was raised very much against debt, and so he's never taken out a traditional bank loan. So he was able to take these qualities and values and instill them into his own business. And so he successfully purchased and holds millions of dollars worth of real estate without using traditional financing. We're very pleased to have you on the show today here, Rex. How are you doing?
I am doing so good. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on here. This
Well,
is amazing.
I'm definitely glad to have you on the show. It's an exciting time to be alive. And the fact that I don't have to pay some kind of promotion or media studio to be able to have a platform to talk to other people and learn is just phenomenal.
It's amazing the technology that we have today. You know,
It
it's awesome.
Well, I guess we'll just get right into the interview. People are curious about how you went about building what you did. What led you in the direction that you decided to go in, and basically, how did you get started?
That is an awesome question, and that's a question I get asked a lot. Is how, especially people that knew me prior. People that knew me 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago, and then didn't really know much about me over the last few years, and then now we talk and they're like, how did you do this? What does that look like? How do you make it happen? Because they knew me prior, but then it's a new me now. So about three, and how far do we want to? I can go back a long ways, or I can go back 3-4 years. Really, when I'll go back about 3-4 years, really when the real estate journey started.
Okay,
When things changed there. So 3 years ago, I read a book. Some friends of mine convinced me to read a book. And that book was the first big pivot in our lives as far as for financial success. That book changed stuff for me. And the mindset that I had then was a very poor mindset. I wouldn't even go buy the book. I went and found a free version of it somewhere so I could listen to it, because I wouldn't pay $10 for a book, because I wasn't a reader then. I'm like, what is a book going to do for me?
Yeah.
So that book was the first big pivot for our lives.
Well, you're building up the suspense. Well, now we're wondering, what was the title of the book?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
So
Robert Kiyosaki, right?
Yep, that was the book. And even though prior I owned businesses, owned my own job in a sense, I didn't know anything about investing. Investing was a total new everything to me. And that book there made me realize struggling with money is a choice. It's not a have to. And from there, I didn't go straight into real estate because everything was brand new to me. My goal was to learn how I could take my money, put my money somewhere, and that it could be working for me 24/7. That was my goal. And how to do that, I had no idea.
I just connect your ability to earn from the hours you're putting into the work.
Yes. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about real estate. I didn't know anything about, to me, in the only form of investing that I knew was to buy a new piece of equipment, then myself buy a new chainsaw, because I was a tree cutter, and go out and use that chainsaw myself. That was the only way I knew how to invest. So I started looking everywhere, really started just listening to anything that I thought might get me closer to where I wanted to go, such as how to invest in the stock market, how to day trade. I thought it'd be pretty cool if I'd hear gurus talk about they day trade, make 10 grand one day day trading. I'm like, that'd be pretty cool. And then I realized that That's not the norm.
Yeah. Um,
And maybe there's people out there that do it all the time, but I'm like, where I am, I don't have the money to put into it to do that. I don't know anything about that. But as I was working, just my day-to-day work, I started noticing properties that needed fixed up, that had burnt down. Because where I was at that point, I didn't have a lot of money.
mm,
We didn't. And I've never had a bank loan of any sort, not even for a vehicle. At that time, I never even had a credit card. So I had absolutely zero credit, no bank loans, and I had started some new businesses. So there's no way, being self-employed, started new businesses, no bank loan, no credit, I would ever get a bill. I would never be able to get a bank loan for at least a minimum of 2 years.
yeah, because they require that much job history or residential history, right?
Yep. So, I'd sold a lawn care business and started a landscape or tree service business. And so I knew I had a minimum of 2 years before I could obtain any sort of bank loan. So it was discouraging, but it was also, I knew that I could do it eventually, but it was discouraging at the same time. So I was looking at properties that I could get that would have a low barrier to entry, such as a house that's burnt down.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I could slowly fix it up over the course of a couple years and then sell it and make money. So I started noticing real estate, and I would go cut trees down and I'd work for other real estate investors on their rental properties. Then I started listening to some like Bigger Pockets podcast and stuff that was talking about rental properties, and it just captivated me in a sense that I wanted to own rental properties. I want to own all these properties. I want to have that passive income coming in, even though we all know, just owning a rental property isn't necessarily passive income either. But I loved that idea of it. To me, it was a way that I could make a footprint on the community that I was in, a visible footprint. He fixed up that property. He fixed that up, really improving the community.
No,
Wow.
I really like that. Growing up, I did window washing and a few other things. I just remember my dad, as part of his business, he would go by buildings that we do work at. Like, yeah, we do work on that building. We do work on that building. And I'm imagining it's the same thing for when you're fixing up your properties. You're like, that's work that I did myself. And look at how much better the town looks because of the sweat equity I put into it.
Yeah. And I was already familiar with that to a point. It's a great point that you bring up. And it makes me realize that even prior, I was already familiar to that because I owned a lawn care business where we mowed 150 different yards every week. So driving around the towns, I'd be like, oh, I mow that yard. I used to mow that yard. They sold that place. I mowed that yard. I trimmed those bushes. And then I was in tree service. So I'm like, I cut down that tree. I trimmed that big tree. I installed that landscaping. Things like that, I was already making a mark on the community prior. So that might be part of what attracted me to the real estate side of it.
I like that. Yeah, it's something familiar too. Like just from the experiences that I had as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
I can relate to that. That's really neat.
Yeah. And then from there, I just continued with my work and continued to listen to podcasts or books, that anything that gave me hope of financial freedom one day, while also slowly doing the work because it seems so far out there. But the way to change your life is to change your thoughts. And the way to change your thoughts is by the content that you consume.
Mm,
So by reading books, listening to podcasts as I'm cutting these trees or driving or whatever it is, this was stuff that was pushing me in the direction that I wanted to go. And it starts by changing the content that you consume. If I wouldn't have been consuming the content that I wouldn't be here today.
I can relate to that as well because for a very long time I was very self-critical, and I'd go through depression because of certain things that had happened in my life. I was assaulted, had a huge head injury because of it, and the key factor that happens with everyone who gets depressed is what they call rumination, where they start to spiral on a downward spiral of thoughts. But if you can break that cycle and focus on the positive, then things turn around. It's just hard to do when you're in it. So I like that you say that you need to change the content you're consuming because the brain doesn't think in negatives. If you say, don't think of an elephant, that's the first thing you think of. So you have to make a different focus, the core focus. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yep. And I didn't even realize what I was doing and what that was setting me up for in the future. The reason I was doing it is because it gave me hope of a life better than what I had, of financial freedom one day. It's not that I had a terrible life, because I had still an amazing life. I had a wife and a daughter, and we had some ground, and we was doing all kinds of cool stuff. But I wanted financial freedom, and by listening to that stuff, it gave me hope of financial freedom in the future.
Well, what's incredible about that, Rex, is that that hope can be available to everybody who wants to do the same thing.
Yes. It's literally out there. It's not, I didn't win a lottery. I didn't win any big paycheck. I didn't come from money. My dad didn't write me a check. Matter of fact, when I started my real estate stuff and made the big jump, my dad said I would lose everything in a year. I didn't just not come from money. I had people trying to keep me from doing what I was doing, from where I wanted to go. Not so much that they didn't want to see me get there, but they truly believed I would not succeed at that.
Where do you think that comes from? Do you think it's just a learned behavior, or?
So I don't blame my dad for saying that, or anybody else, because I know their past. My dad's lived through some rough times, really rough times. He's 60, I want to say 63 or so, but he's lived through some rough times. And he's seen his parents live through some rough times. So that living through those rough times, but not ever investing in themselves to change that, just went out and worked harder to make it through those rough times. So I know from knowing his past, I don't blame him for saying it.
Well, I imagine it came from a place of wanting to protect you from a fall, right?
Yeah, he didn't want to see me lose everything. He was trying to protect me, and I truly believe that the reason he said it was he was trying to protect me. He's a person that doesn't take a lot of risk and never has. The safest person, I've heard him called the safest person someone has ever known. So not a person to take risk, and he didn't want to see me lose everything. So he didn't understand that we can actually do some of these things that most people don't think we can do.
And I think part of it's just the fact that not very many people are exposed to the possibility of it working out. I remember when my parents tried to do a rental property for the first time, they ended up getting something like $17,000 worth of damages in 3 weeks with their very first tenant. And so after that happened, they just wrote off real estate entirely.
Yeah. And it's, my dad didn't own real estate. He's owned his own properties for the last lot of years, like his personal house. But I was raised very against debt growing
Mhm.
up. You
Yeah.
either pay cash for it or you can owner finance it. So we owner finance things as well, but don't go get the debt. And reading Robert Kiyosaki's book, it made me realize the difference between good debt and bad debt.
I struggled with that concept from that book for like a year and a half before it finally clicked.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was the same way. I was raised up very, very against debt, and the idea that there was even a thing that existed that you could refer to as good debt, just I couldn't wrap my mind around it for a very, very long time.
Yeah, it is something that I think people who are raised so against debt, they have a hard time making the differentiating, I guess is how you would say it, the difference between good debt and bad debt.
Yep.
For me, it wasn't super hard because it just clicked. Good debt will make me money. Bad debt will just suck money away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I just realized if I can utilize debt, buy something, and then that debt will make me a check every month, that's pretty good debt to me.
Yeah.
Because
Um,
in that instance, I just printed money out of thin air.
It's a value creation, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it boils down to, is that we're creating value, and then the difference in the cash flow is just evidence that the value has been created.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's creating value in the world out there.
It's very neat. And it's one of those things that, like I said, it took me a long time to wrap my head around. But now that I see a lot of the ways that the wealthy are able to utilize money as a tool, and this is one of those examples, it's just all of a sudden it seems like everything is much more abundant than it was. And nothing's changed except for my perspective.
The information, the content that you consumed is what's changed,
Yeah.
which then therefore has changed your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So now a negative, you don't see a negative as a negative, you see the negative as a positive. Or you see all the positive that's in the negative and you forget to actually see the negative itself.
Which is it's kind of a miraculous thing. Um, Looking back 5 years, even I wouldn't have even thought that I'd be this far, like doing a podcast online or doing private money loans for other real estate investors so that they can make their purchases. Like all these things that I've been doing over the past year, I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have even foreseen that because I was in such a different mental space 5 years ago from where I am right now.
Yeah.
But
It's amazing when we're in the growth itself, we don't necessarily see the growth, but once we've been in it for a while, then we can go back and look.
yeah,
For me, 2 years ago, today I'm living what I dreamed of 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I had a 10-year goal, and I'm literally living that today. A year and a half ago, I had a 10-year goal, and I'm living that every day, and I have been for the last 8 months.
that's incredible.
So it's to look back and just think, just be like, this is what I dreamed of. This is literally what I'm living today, but this is where I want to go over here.
Very neat. So going into this, we know that now that you've been doing the real estate, you're owning millions of dollars worth of properties. Did you have any kinds of hiccups or like setbacks along the way that made you question whether you're going to have success on that?
So I struggled with mindset. We all do, and all forever will. So in December of 22, someone sent me a video. One of my brothers sent me a video of a guy. He's like, this guy's doing some really cool stuff. I think it would really help you out. It was a video of Pace Morby. And I watched the video and I realized it was a 16-hour video. So I sat down and once I started watching it, I was captivated. I couldn't get up. I couldn't do anything else. I was there. And the reason it captivated me so much is because the previous 2 years since I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book and started gaining interest in real estate, it's like I started over as it's like when you're on a journey. You start here and you go all the way and then you see a river. I seen that river out there a ways, a huge river. And I'm like, how am I ever going to swim that? I don't know how to swim. How can I ever get across that? I don't have money to buy a boat. I don't have this. I don't have all these things. But I kept walking towards that river. I didn't turn around and go back. I kept walking towards that river. But in December of 22, I was nearing that river. And the thing that was holding me back was didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have any credit. And that was going to keep me from being able to swim that river. So when I started watching that video, I seen that like the Red Sea. It was like that river just parted. And it was like when I started watching it, it was as if that river in front of me just slowly started to part and give me a path to walk through. Because I realized that, and that's why I couldn't turn away from that video for 16 hours, because I realized I don't need credit. I don't need money. I can literally go buy these properties today. I got up from that video when I was done and I looked at my wife and I said, this is the way that we are going to create financial freedom. And it was the second big turning point in our lives. So shortly after I joined the program, I didn't have a lot of extra money to get into the program. So I seller financed my way into the program and started just doing all kinds of stuff. I was taking action, but no action. I didn't have anything dialed in. It was just action.
It's like throwing darts at the thing to see what stick, kind of a thing.
Yes. But I wasn't getting the results I wanted to as quick as I wanted to. So I started to get discouraged. That was January of 2023. Started to get discouraged. My work started getting busier. So I stepped back from real estate for several months and kind of reverted back to what I was previously, just listening to mindset stuff, listening to stuff that gave me hope that I could actually make it happen. Because I didn't have someone there to grab my hand and lead me, say, do this, do this, do this. The blueprint was there, but I didn't know how to see it. And I didn't know how to read the blueprint.
How to implement it, I guess you could say, huh?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I really like that you framed it this way, because I've come to realize that in order for us to create a new version of ourselves, the old version of ourselves has to die. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is that the old version of ourselves doesn't always want to die. And so we'll revert back to that old version of ourselves several times before we finally figure out a way to change into the new version we're trying to create.
Yeah. And that's what I did there. Is I reverted back to that old version for a period of time. And it took me a bit, but I finally got out of it. Even though we bought our first investment property May of 2023. And that property was because of a social media post I made 5 months prior, 6 months prior, or whatever, is what ended up leading to me getting that property. But even then, I bought the first property. I was still in a little bit of discouragement. It was really cool to get the first property. but it was still felt like this was lucky.
Uh,
Mindset
I'm not
still.
exactly sure why this happened or why it worked, huh?
I literally got a call at 10 o'clock one morning, and as I was headed to my grandma's funeral,
Mm,
and they said, "Hey, I was going to buy this property from this wholesaler. I have decided not to. Is this something you want?" Seller finance, $9,000 to the sellers, 3.9% interest rate for 30 years. It's on a small house. It
mhm.
needed work. Like, this was the dream first house. But my mindset was still so broken that I didn't realize I I'd been putting in work for years to make this actually happen. But when it actually happened, it seemed like, oh, I might have got lucky here.
Yeah.
And then there was still some of that discouragement. How are we going to move forward? How am I actually going to create financial freedom? Because I'm not going to create it off of one property. So working through those struggles and working through that mindset stuff still. And then the 1st of June on 2023, me and my wife sat down and had a conversation. And because I was working on my tree service business, we were also training dogs and competing with dogs. I was doing real estate stuff. I would go work all day. She would be home training dogs. I would come home and work on real estate all evening. We kind of live in our separate lives, and we enjoy doing stuff together. So we sat down and had a conversation. We just decided something has to go. Is it the dogs? Is it the real estate? Is it the tree service? What is it that has to go? But something has to. We enjoy what we do, but we hate doing it apart from each other.
So you can be together.
Mm-hmm. And it was then we decided we would sell everything we had and move to town. We had 45 acres out in the country. We raised a lot of sheep. We raised and trained dogs, travel around, compete with them. I had a tree service business. We lived in a fifth wheel RV on our property. And that type of life is all I've ever known. I had zero income coming in from real estate. And I knew it would be months before I had any income coming in. But we really had to decide what is our goal? What do we want? I want to own another ranch. I want to build a ranch full time. But we can't do that where we are now.
Mm.
What do we have to go create to then be able to go ranch full time? And we realized the real estate business is what we had to create first. So we made the goal 1st of June. By the end of August, we would have everything sold off. We would be living in town and doing real estate full time.
So you
So
ended up getting rid of your property, your RV, the dogs too, or did you keep the dogs? Like, what did that look like?
So we ended up keeping 2 dogs. We sent them to some friends of ours because they're working border collie dogs. So
Okay.
one we imported from Ireland, so nice dogs. One of them that I won a lot of stuff off, national championships and stuff like that. But we couldn't get rid of a couple of them. We sent them to some friends and they're using them still. And the dogs are loving their life. But my wife had just bought a nice reining horse. We had that was the life we've always known.
Mm-hmm.
We sold everything. We kept 2 vehicles is basically what we kept. Sold my tree service, all my equipment, sold all of that. Sold our RV, sold our property, sold all of our animals, sold everything we had.
It's kind of a all or nothing kind of gambit, huh?
We decided we'd burn the boat and we was going to jump into the water and either swim to the shore or sink. And I don't recommend everybody to do that.
Yeah.
But for us, we decided that's what we needed to do. That's what we needed to do to make to create what we wanted to create.
But you started with getting really clear about the vision you had for what you needed to do. So being clear, I imagine, led you to understand what kind of steps you're going to have to take.
We knew what we wanted to do. Yep, we got clear on that vision. We weren't clear on the steps yet, but we got clear on the vision.
Okay.
And then before the end of August, we was able to get clear on at least a portion of the steps.
Well, as long as you, I had a friend on the podcast recently who explained it as holding a candlestick in a dark cathedral. You walk forward and you can see portions of it where the light reaches, but you're not going to be able to discover the rest of the outline of the building unless you walk forward with it.
Exactly. Yes. And if we would have waited until we knew what the next steps looked like, we would have never got there.
Yeah.
But we just had to start and build from there.
Well, if you're in motion, you can course correct, but if you're not moving, it doesn't take you anywhere.
100%. You know, even if you are going in the wrong direction, you can turn it and move it back to the right path. You know, so it's just get going.
Yeah.
And for us, we realize we just have to get this going. Then we can determine where exactly it goes.
I really like that. And like you said, it might not be for everybody. I think it depends on circumstances, personality. There's all kinds of factors, but I do think the most important thing that you're describing is take action and fail forward.
Yes. But continue when you have a dream, when you have an idea, when you have this dream of what you think you want to create, go find the podcasts, find the books, and start reading that stuff, listening to that stuff. Listen to the stuff that gives you hope in the dream that you have. Don't get rid of that dream because you think it's impossible and will never happen. Keep that dream. But just start listening and bringing in the information and the content that keeps you hoping and dreaming for that dream.
Allow it to move you forward.
It will move you forward, and you don't see it for a while, but it will move you forward.
100%. Oh, that's really cool. So you've taken this scary jump. I imagine it wasn't without some concerns and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens next? How does things pan out?
So, it's like any road. It was rocky at times, and it's the way it is. I worked so hard to get myself in rooms of people and invest in myself. Get myself in rooms of people that were doing more than I am doing.
Mm-hmm.
The house I'm sitting in right now, our personal house, we bought it with no banks, no credit checks, no credit. We used a little bit of our own money to buy this one, but not much. It's a brand new house, basically, with a 3.7% interest rate on it. And so this was our first subject to property we bought. So in August 1st, the first part of August, we bought our first house. On my 25th birthday, we moved into our personal residence. When we made that goal of selling everything and moving into town, we didn't have anything lined up. We just started working. We had a deadline that we had to meet. So we moved in, closed on it that day, moved into it that day, bought another house in August, September, October, bought another house. From the time that I joined my first mentorship program to the time that I made a penny from real estate was 10 months. On our fourth property that I bought, we bought it, we closed it, put renters in there. went to make the mortgage payment. We didn't do stuff correctly and realized there was $20,000 of arrears. The property was clear in foreclosure.
Mm.
We were living off of savings over here. So that was a huge hit for us. That was the first property that actually started to make us money and cash flow. And then we got hit with this big
22 grand.
mistake that we made.
Yeah.
And that was a blow. And it was okay to kind of whine and moan about it for a little bit. But we had to make a decision. Are we going to catch this up? What are we going to do here? The sellers, they didn't care if we caught it up or not. They didn't care. We could have let it go to foreclosure and it wouldn't have bothered them.
Yeah, they're in the wind at this point.
Well, they knew that it was in arrears. They whited out some stuff on the mortgage statement.
Mm.
And they didn't have the money to help catch it up. So we had to just make that decision. But that property there was literally the staple in a whole nother business that we created. That was the first property to rent out in a way that we created a whole nother business off of because we bought that one property.
So how did you resolve the 22 grand in arrears?
So I just reached out to the mortgage company and I said, hey, what do we need to do? Of course, there was attorney fees and everything else added on that.
Mm.
And they said, it's got to be reinstated. So I went and got a cashier's check out of my savings, mailed a cashier's check to them. My thought was they may call this note due. They may not. I don't know. But I'm going to take a chance. And if they do, the seller said that they would do whatever. They would sign whatever papers they needed to fix it, but they didn't have the money to catch up the arrears. So we just decided to take a chance on that property. And thought we may lose the 20,000. We may not. I don't know. So far, it's been great. It's been one of the best properties we've ever bought.
Okay. So is it like not resolved yet, or is that still kind of?
So it's all resolved. So the mortgage got all caught up,
Okay.
So we've been making all the payments, regularly and everything else. So everything's good with it.
So your $20,000 or $22,000 cashier's check paid off, and you were able to maintain and keep the property.
Yeah. So the 22,000 or 20,000, I think is what it was.
Okay.
It reinstated the loan.
Mm-hmm.
So it had a loan on it. So it
Yeah.
just reinstated that loan. So
That's
we're still
subject
just
to loan then.
Yes, yep, subject to
Gotcha.
property. So the seller's existing loan is still in place, and we just reinstated that loan. So we still have a monthly mortgage payment on it.
Mm-hmm.
But the mortgage isn't in my name. The mortgage is in the seller's name.
And then your tenants are the ones that are helping you cover the cost for that mortgage payment and generating a bit of income as well.
Correct. Yep. It's been rented for the last 10 months and creating cash flow every month.
Very cool. Well, that's really exciting. I think it's important for us to always note that things aren't always going to be rainbows and flowers, right? But I think there's a lot of utility in having situations like that and learning from them, because you're able to expand your capacity to be able to do more things. So you've been able to resolve that issue. You took that chance and put your own money into the thing to make sure that it worked. What does the future look like for Rex and his wife as they're trying to build out their real estate portfolio?
So we are still buying properties creatively. We will be closing on one, I think it's our 9th property next Friday. And then we are set to close on our 10th one on middle of October. Okay. So everything we've bought has been creatively. I utilize a lot of private money lenders. So property I am buying that close on next week, I am getting paid to buy the property. So my lender's bringing in the whole entry fee to pay the sellers, furnish the property, all the expenses involved, and then I will take an acquisitions fee from it as well. So none of my own money. I already have a signed lease in place. So we will close on the 20th, and I have a signed lease in place for the 30th. So
Okay.
for 10 days, we'll furnish the property, get it all ready, and we have a family moving in on the 30th that the property will be cash flowing from then on.
Very cool. So, and you're going to be closing on your 10th property in October. That seems like a pretty momentous milestone to have 10 rental properties.
Yes. Yep. It's a big so I had a 10-year goal of having 10 doors, and I had the 10 doors within 12 months. But now this will be our 10th property, actually.
Okay, gotcha.
So our actually 10th property. So it's a big milestone. We make a living doing the real estate stuff. We have built a whole we own a relocation company that we started
Mhm.
from day one, or not day one, but we started it this year. But that one property that I lost the $20,000 on, that's what got us to start this relocation
Gotcha.
company, corporate
So,
housing company. So
oh,
that company
gotcha.
right now, we're growing that company tremendous right now. It's growing like crazy. So we're putting a lot of our time and energy into that company right now. And then we're just buying properties as they come in. And I'm having lenders fund the properties, fund the entry fees. And we try to have signed leases in place before we ever close on the properties. So that way that cuts down our expenses. We can just go right into
Your holding costs and stuff.
it cuts right down into we can just go right into cash flowing.
Very cool. So, maybe, sorry, can't talk today. Maybe you could explain the relocation company concept, because when you first said that, my first initial thought was that maybe like a moving company that helps people move from place to place. But you mentioned it's for corporate services. Is that something like where you're housing employees and then giving them the ability to have a place to stay when they move from place to place? Or can you just kind of explain that better?
Yeah. So everything in between. So we house a lot of displaced families
Okay.
due to fire, flood damage. We house a lot of employees. We house employees that corporations move around. We house contractors, everything in between. Really, anybody that needs a furnished house to stay in for 30 days or more. Maybe it's your neighbor down the road who's remodeling their house and they need a place to live for 3 months while they're doing a major overhaul remodel on
On
their own house.
their interior. Okay.
Yep.
Very cool. I like that. I imagine that's one of the things you're using these rental properties for then.
Correct. Yep. That's what we use. That's what brings a lot of our tenants for our rental properties, but we also partner with a lot of other homeowners and landlords. We put a lot of tenants in a lot of other homeowners and landlords properties all throughout
Okay.
the state of Idaho.
Gotcha. Very cool. I like that. It's not a model that I've heard of before.
It's been really good for us. We're very dialed in on what we want, the area we do it in. So that's been so life changing, is to be able to get dialed in. You know,
Yeah.
I don't buy properties all over the nation. I only buy in Idaho. I
Okay.
know my market. I know what I'm buying. I have the company there that I know what I can rent these properties out for. I know what I can cash flow on. I can underwrite a property in 5 minutes because I can simply look at the numbers, run my calculator, grab a pen and paper, and decide whether it's going to be a good fit or not a good fit.
You're familiar with your market there in Idaho then.
It makes a big difference, knowing the market. I've lived here my whole life and I know what I can do with stuff because I like that property over there. I'm renting out for X amount. This one here, I'm renting out for this amount. This one over here, I'm renting out for this amount. So this one over here, I can get this much for it.
Gotcha. Well, and it kind of comes from that same thing that we were talking about earlier, where maybe you don't know what you're doing at first, but as long as you're moving forward, then you start to understand and you start to learn what works and what doesn't. And having that focus in that one area has been able to help you amplify that kind of effect.
It has. It's been able to really You know, it's hard to get niched because you have to say no to so much opportunity.
Mm,
I have said no to some amazing looking deals out there that are literally just across the state line in a couple hours. And I'm like, I should go buy that property. That's an awesome property. And then it's like, no, I can't do that. I won't look at that. I cannot buy that. I am only buying here. So it was a learning thing. And it took me a while to learn how to say no to opportunity. But once I did, so much opportunity started flowing in from over here.
yeah, I actually was talking about that just the other morning. I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday. I try to talk to the camera on Instagram every day just to get practice talking to the camera
Yep.
and develop my communication skills. And that was one of the things that I'd heard in one of my coaching courses recently was the opportunity consists of all the things that you say no to.
Yes.
And it's just funny how that when you start to learn something, it's like that red car effect where you start to see it and all the other interactions that you're having throughout your day.
Yep.
That's very cool. I like that. Well, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today here, Rex. I was just kind of curious. Do you have any kind of suggestions for people that might be listening in that are trying to get started, resources or advice that you'd like to pass along to the audience?
Yeah. So something that has always served me well is also when someone farther ahead of me tells me to go do something, just go do it. You know, if they are where I want to go and they say, Rex, go do this, if I just go do that, it's always served me well. Also, if you're going to invest money in yourself. Your income will never surpass the level of personal development that you have. If your personal development's down here, your income will never go to here. Your income will cap out below it still. If you can bring your personal development up, your income will come up. It just will. They stay pretty close together. So if you're investing money, invest money in yourself. Whether that's a coaching program, whether that's spending a day with someone, you know, as a new person, that's what I tried to do is just go find someone that was doing what I wanted to do and see if I could spend the day with them, watching what they're doing, seeing their properties, seeing the inside of their business. You know, you can experience it before you have it.
Gotcha.
And once you experience it, you can never go back from it.
Yeah, because a brain that expands never returns to its original shape.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my thing is what I still do. I invest in coaching programs. I invest in boot camps. I invest in that stuff because that's what gets me to the level that I want to go to.
No, I think that's excellent advice. Both in the idea that you should just go out and do what the people who are successful tell you to do, and try not to question it, because they know what they're doing. They're successful. They did it, and that's why they're successful is because they did those things. And then in personal development, I've found that to be the case myself. Just even in W-2 jobs where I gained new skills and was able to increase my hourly wage. So like
Yes.
I definitely applies even in all aspects of life. Well, very cool. I'm very grateful for your time here today. I just want to let everyone know that you can connect with Rex on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You just look for the handle at the Rex Shippy. And I think you had mentioned to me before we got on the call today that you're also going to be doing some boot camps or kind of a day with Rex. You tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we have done some day with Rex in the past, where I normally keep those pretty small. So normally just a
Mm-hmm.
few people. We will walk through properties that we own. We'll do breakdown on 8 foot. I have a big 8 foot whiteboard that we'll do whole breakdowns of how we bought properties, how that works. Figure out what are you struggling with? What are the bottlenecks in your business right now? And what how can we get rid of that bottleneck? And I've had some great feedback from those to where, it's really helped some people out. The boot camp that we're doing we're looking at this fall. I don't have a set date for it yet, but a 2-day boot camp that it's hands-on. Most people don't offer anything hands-on. For me, I would have killed to have that when I was starting out, just simply hands-on. And so that's to me, it's like, what did I want when I was starting out? What would have benefited me? How can I create that now for other people? So that's the kind of a high level view of what the boot camp is going to look like.
Okay. And so if people are interested in possibly being able to participate in that, they just reach out to you on social media, or how would you like that to happen?
Yeah, if you send me a DM on Instagram or Facebook, Instagram's probably the best, but either one, and then we can talk details of that.
Very cool. Well, like I said, I'm very grateful for you to come on here today and share your story with us. If there's anything that anyone in the audience would like to know, feel free to reach out to either myself or to Rex on social media, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. And if we don't know the answer, we definitely have resources where we can find it, and we'll get back to you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Nathaniel.
Yeah, definitely. My pleasure. And this has been the Pot of Gold podcast. We talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. And we'd like to thank you for tuning in. You'll have a very good day.